Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there friends, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Today we are looking at verses 7, 8, and 9 here in Psalm 35. Now remember, we're going to do Psalm 35 in two parts. So I'm going to read down to verse 14 this week, and then next week we'll pick up in 15 and go through the end of the psalm. This is a psalm which I've entitled A Prayer for the Soul. It's a psalm of David, and so David is praying, and apparently he's got some pretty bad enemies who are trying to destroy his soul. That's why I call it the prayer for the soul. And if you'll just indulge me for a minute, let me just review where we've seen the soul mentioned. He mentions the soul there in verse 3 when he tells the Lord to draw out spear, close up the breach, welcome my pursuers, say to my soul, I am your salvation. So that immediately puts us in the category of a spiritual psalm. This is for the soul. This is soulish. So we're not talking about people who are trying to attack us. We're talking about an enemy who can affect the soul. And so he says to the Lord, say to my soul, I am your salvation, because there's only one salvation for the soul, and that is in the Lord. And then in verse 4, he says, make shamed and confounded those who seek my soul. So there's somebody who's seeking the soul. Who is that? Well, Peter tells us about him. He says he's like a roaring lion that prowls around seeking someone to devour. That someone there, he's looking for a soul. Today we have soul mentioned 3 times, and let me read those verses for you here in 7 and in 8, 7 through 9. For in vain they hide their net in a pit for me. In vain have they behaved shamefully against my soul. May ruin come upon him without his knowledge. May his net which he has hidden catch him. May he fall into the pit. So my soul will rejoice in the Lord. It will rejoice in his salvation. So we have the soul mentioned here 3 times. First of all, here in verse 7, in vain they hide their net. In vain they have behaved shamefully against my soul. You'll notice that twice he says in vain. In vain they hide, in vain they behave. So what's the vanity here? Well, the vanity here is that even though the Lord has taken hold of buckler and shield and drawn out the spear and closed up the breach, they still think they have a chance. They still think, the enemy still thinks that he can affect the soul, that he can esteem the affliction of the soul of the psalmist. But the truth, friend, is that he cannot. He cannot. It's vain for him to even try this, to hide the net in a pit. It's vain that they behave shamefully against the soul because the Lord's standing in the breach. That's the answer to the prayer. The Lord's already there. He's standing in the breach. And then David says this, may ruin come upon him without his knowledge. May his net which he has hidden catch him, and may he fall into the pit. Guess what? There is a pit that is designated for the enemy, and he's going to fall in it, and he's going to fall and fall and fall for 1,000 years will he fall. Yeah, he's going to fall into a pit, all right, and it's a pit that he does not want to fall in, and it will happen to him suddenly. He's going to be a busy man or a busy person up until that point, and then he's going to fall into a pit, surely. So my soul will rejoice in the Lord. Oh, so the Lord's victory does what for the soul? It gives us joy and rejoicing. And then notice that last piece. It will rejoice in his salvation. Remember, salvation, right up there in verse 3. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. This is why it's vain for the enemy to do this. And yet they continue to try. It will rejoice. That is, my soul will rejoice in his salvation. The salvation that the psalmist, asked for. All right, join me again tomorrow. We'll look at verses 10, 11, and 12 here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, Check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.